All right, we'll call to order the meeting of Planning Commission for the City of Brainerd. And first thing is roll call.
Gorham.
Here.
Grasula.
Here.
Higgins.
Here.
Peterson. Powell. Erickson.
Here.
And Norwood.
Here. And Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, seeking a motion regarding the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda with items 7 and 8 swapped. Putting new business before unfinished business.
Second.
All right, motion by Grasula, second by Erickson. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. All right, 8A. Oh, sorry. Correction. Item 5A. Looking for a motion for the approval of the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
And motion by Erickson, second by Gorham. All in favor? Aye. And all opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes. And item 6, public forum. This is time allocated for citizens to bring matters not on the agenda to the attention of the commission. Is anyone online? And sorry, I should open it. So opening the public forum at 6:01. And anybody in the audience? And no one online. And we'll close the public forum at 6:02. And moving on to item 8A.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. High Tech Construction, on behalf of Jake Brandt State Farm Agency, has submitted a variance request to allow for a non-screened rear parking lot with a 0-foot setback to the alley at 525 Washington Street. This property is located in the Commercial Corridor Zoning District. So with that, non-residential uses in residential zoning districts and all uses in all other zoning districts, driveways, parking stalls shall be set back at a minimum of 3 feet from the side and rear property lines. However, staff did look further into the screening is not required for this one because it is under 10 spaces, so there's no variance requirement for that. The applicant does propose a 0-foot setback for the parking lot / driveway to the rear property line. Essentially, that parking area becomes an entire driveway and parking area up to the building. With that, variances may be granted when the applicant for the variance establishes that there are practical difficulties in complying with the zoning ordinance. Certainly the applicant's looking to maximize the property here. The elimination of on-street parking along Washington Street due to the reconstruction project is a contributing factor for this request, which is not caused by the landowner. This variance request, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. Most properties located in the commercial corridor zoning districts have 0-foot setbacks to the rear property line for driveways and parking lots. I would say if 75 to 90% have essentially that extension of that parking area right back to the alley. I did note in there that's something that Planning Commission at a future meeting should maybe consider for some of these downtown areas as well as some of our commercial corridor areas that abut those paved alleys. But with that, staff does recommend approval of the variance request as presented, and this one does require a public hearing.
All right, any questions of staff before opening the public hearing?
I have a couple questions.
Yep.
Do we know what the total number of parking spots is going to be with the completion of the lot, approximately?
So I did add everything up, and I consulted with the applicant. They're not going to be over we have parking maximums now, based on the square footage of the property, and then based on the parking stalls, they will not be over that required number. I don't have the exact number offhand of both parking lots.
Okay. Is there any reason we can't have screening on the east side of the property, on 6th Street? Is there going to be anything there, or will that run right up to the sidewalk on 6th Street?
So as proposed right now, there's no requirement for that. It could potentially be added as a condition, but certainly other parking lots that are under 10 wouldn't be required to do it. So, is there a question that we should require it in this instance? I would say if the lots themselves where the headlights were maybe facing facing across the street or facing that direction of the street, there would certainly be potential for a need for vegetation. The headlights are going to be facing towards the building. So in staff's recommendation, screening wouldn't potentially be needed in that area.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff?
Question. So there was a house on this site that's been torn down. We now require garages, so is that why that kind of precludes having a house there? And so the only real practical use would be to have a parking lot. Is that essentially, because there wouldn't be place for a garage in.
Yeah, so I know there was, before Mr. Brandt had purchased a property, there was a house that was on this one. It may have operated as a boarding house. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they were looking at splitting it up. We had off-street parking requirements, garage requirements, which made it impractical to be able to do anything with this site. So now they're looking at extending the office there, which is a permitted use in the commercial corridor district. And then the existing parking lot certainly can function, but I think a lot of these business owners have contacted our department as well as engineering, kind of realizing with the Washington Street reconstruction project. So during construction, a lot of people will be accessing these buildings through the alley. Plus, when it's done, you lose the on-street parking that was originally there as well. So I think there'll be more businesses in the future that may be looking to do improvements to the rear of the property there. So I think that was a big reason for it.
Okay, thank you.
Any? Yes?
One more, I just want to follow up on that. So the reason the house is not there, it was a purchase for a parking lot, correct? It wasn't that it didn't have a garage, it was purchased to be a parking lot, correct?
So the house, the building goes partially into where the house was.
Okay.
And there were significant issues interior-wise as well as becoming something that was getting close to, it was on our building officials' radar to look at it. There was some significant issues with it. It was in the commercial corridor district, so there was no requirements that it had to be removed by conditional use permit or anything like that. It was a non-conforming use in that district. People were interested in it, but it took up the entire lot, so there was no off-street parking available for a sizable home like that. I think most people are looking at triplexes or fourplexes for that one. There's no availability to do garages either, which was a requirement at the time. So again, building was removed. The expansion here is part of where that building was, plus where this parking is. So it's not just parking that where the building was located.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, at 6:08, we'll open the public hearing for 525 Washington Street. And if the applicant would like to speak, you may, and give kind of a little bit of a background to the application.
So, I'm Jake Brandt, by the way. I knew this was coming down the pipeline with Washington Street and all that. A lot of the neighboring businesses have all been meeting and kind of wondering what everyone was doing. This was a property that was honestly vacant, and it was an eyesore, and it was becoming just something that was not being used. So I did a research and figured out who owned it, contacted him, and he said there was some other people looking at potentially making it a clinic. There was a lot of things, but everyone was handcuffed with no parking, and there just was no room on this thing where it was stemmed in. So I went in and offered it and purchased it, and then I tore it down for the simplicities of not wanting to move my location of my building because I like where I live. I like being in Brainerd. And I have 2 remote workers that work from home that I want them working in the office, so I added on an additional 4 offices and a big conference room. And it just makes sense with losing my parking that we would have some parking back there with a back access door. So it's a total brand new addition with a new entrance on the backside to get us through the remodel and continue to function. So that's why we're here for that. And I honestly, like, when it's completed, if what we want, I think it would be a really nice piece of property on that corner.
Any questions of the applicant at all? All right, thank you.
Yep.
And for anyone else to speak at the public hearing for the variance request at 525 Washington Street? And a second time of asking for anyone wanting to speak at the public hearing for 525 Washington Street. And one last call for anyone wanting to speak at the public hearing for 525 Washington Street. All right, and we'll close the public hearing at 6:10 and bring it back to the commission. Any discussion or looking for a motion?
I guess the only point I would make a discussion is it kind of spells out to me how important it is to keep property up and not allow it to get dilapidated, so we have no options. And hopefully with enforced, it seems like the city council is developing an appetite for code enforcement again, which is great. Hopefully we'll avoid these situations where there's only one future for a house and one future, because housing is so important. I will support the motion, but I still, that's my feeling.
Any other discussion or looking for a motion to be made?
I'd make the motion to approve the variance request as presented.
I'll second. We'll go with the motion with Erickson and the second with Higgins. And any further discussion? And seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And motion passes. Next steps for the applicant.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as the Planning Commission is a recommending body, this will go to the City Council meeting for final approval or denial, and that'll be Monday, July 7th at 7:30.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 8B.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the city received a formal letter of intent to purchase 3 city lots in the industrial park for a dermatology clinic. Clinics are not currently allowed in the general industrial district. They were in the previous code. The EDA recommended the commission should consider this and would be something that should be an allowed use in the general industrial district. The EDA also did recommend that staff should begin working on a purchase and development agreement with the developer, as well as city council at this last meeting also recommended that city staff should begin pursuing a purchase and development agreement and negotiations with the developer. So with that, staff recommends to hold a public hearing and recommend approval of the proposed ordinance as presented, and I can answer any questions.
And any questions for staff? Yes.
Is the applicant going to be attending the meeting tonight?
Applicant's not attending the meeting for this item.
I'm going to put you in the enforcement position of answering questions. It looked like a heck of a lot of parking spaces. Do we have any idea of how many people are going to work in this building and how many parking spots?
So the amount of people working in the building, that hasn't been determined. I do know that they are going to be expanding the number of employees. I have that number, but not offhand. I can certainly email that out to you as I get some additional information. But with that, we're not really considering the actual site layout or anything tonight. Is more of just, should this use be allowed in the district?
Well, I'll follow up with that. Have we done more mixed use like this in the industrial park, or is this a first? I'm just trying to figure out.
We do have some other office businesses in there. I do know right offhand because I work with them quite a bit. KLD Engineering's right in there as well. So if this wasn't added, they wouldn't be able to put an extension or add on something to their building. So I'm sure there are some other offices as well. Offices that are in conjunction with like warehousing, manufacturing, something like that would be allowed. But when it's a standalone office, that's where right now it would not be permitted.
Yeah, it's a new direction. I'm not necessarily against it, but I'm just trying to think out what it means going forward. Are we going to get industrial people coming in saying, putting out noise and doing what you're supposed to do in an industrial area, in an office building going, you guys are a little loud. Maybe we have to kind of decide, is it number one, an industrial area, or is it a mix? I don't know. I don't have strong feelings, but I have questions, that's all.
And certainly our code's, I guess, a little bit different. I'm not sure how this was considered or in our previous code. Uses that were in the B4, which would be kind of like our general commercial, would be then allowed in the light industrial and then would then be allowed in the general industrial. So general industrial in the previous code is really allowed to do, all of these types of uses that were typically in a commercial, so you do retail. The new code, because we kind of built it from scratch, didn't have that. But from a staff recommendation, I think it does make sense to provide that flexibility, being that general industrial is kind of your heaviest use.
Thank you, that helps me understand this.
Any other items for staff at all? I will say that I was a little bit hesitant, but after further analysis, that finding multiple other office complex or office buildings that are in RGI, they are cleverly hidden, but at the same time, they do exist within our general industrial zoning. And so this will help them free up as far as the ability to move and expand. At this time, just for clarification, opening for a public hearing.
That's correct if there's no other questions.
All right. And we'll open the public hearing for the proposed ordinance of amending section 515-3 at 6:16. And if anybody is wanting to speak at the public hearing for the amended section of 515-3 allowed uses for general industrial, a second request for anybody wanting to speak for proposed ordinance amending section 515-3, and a third and final time of looking for anyone to speak to the proposed ordinance to amend section 515-3. And we'll close the public hearing at 6:17. And bring it back to the commission for any discussion. Otherwise, seeking a motion.
I just want to make a couple comments. I'm going to support the motion, but to, I think, James's point, and to the point that others have made too, I think KLJ you referenced specifically directly across the street, if I'm not mistaken, maybe one building between, but they're very close proximity. So I mean, it's, and as we pointed out, there's other similar uses in industrial areas. And I like that it's positioned, the lots that they're proposing here, it's kind of at the front. So I mean, to me, it's almost nice, almost a gateway into the industrial park, and you could, potentially have more intensive uses kind of going further in. And then from this photo here, I agree, it looks like an awful lot of parking. Max, could you scroll down to the kind of the 3D rendering? Because I thought the same thing. Well, it looks like an awful lot of parking. But then when I see this, it's almost that walkout. So I mean, it really is a sizable structure when you consider kind of the two levels or the walkout nature of it. So I think seeing it from this view, to me, makes that parking look a little bit more appropriate. Just, it almost doubles the square footage, if you will. So just some comments or thoughts that I had on it, so that I thought I'd like to share.
Anyone else? Otherwise, looking for a motion.
I can't see it here. I would make a motion to, I gotta find it here so I get my wording right, but, oops. Unless someone beats me to it. That's always a possibility.
No.
Everybody's a little shy tonight.
Yeah, I'd move to recommend approving the proposed ordinance as presented.
Second.
And motion by Erickson, second by Crisula. Any further discussion? And all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. And motion passes. Moving on to the next item, because there's nobody here. All right. On to item 8C.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item, corner lot properties have consistently had issues with the construction of backyard privacy fences. The fence often bisects the property, splitting the backyard in half. Staff does hear issues quite often from property owners. There is a property owner that reached out to a council member. I sat down with that council member to show them what that ordinance looked like. There's a memo that was included in there to show how that fence ordinance works, especially when a house on a corner lot is really set off of that side corner lot setback. And so with that, to remedy this, staff recommends that for corner properties, if the rear yard abuts an alley, a fence up to 6 1/2 feet high may be erected from a line extended from the rear corner of the principal building to the side corner lot line, and then along the side corner lot line to the rear lot line. And so if you want to go down to the memo that shows the pictures, keep scrolling. So you'll see picture, I guess the pictures on the top there, that's kind of as currently presented, where you have to take it straight from the facade. And then if you go down to the kind of the second set of pictures there, this is what would be allowed then to go from the rear corner of the property there out to the side corner lot line and then to the rear property line. It still would be regulated by some other restrictions in section D. You actually have to keep it 4 feet from the alley property line. So stuff like that would apply. Site triangle stuff would still apply to it. But as worded, it would give that rear property some additional privacy for their backyard fencing while still not covering up the facade of the principal structure. So with that, staff recommends to hold the public hearing and recommends approval of the proposed ordinance as presented.
Any questions of staff?
I do have one question. Where that white vehicle is exiting, presumably, or sitting on that driveway, do you happen to know, so where the red and blue lines are, how far is that to the curb? Or is there
Typically, it's between 15 and 20 feet. I'm guessing that one, because the truck's going over that, you're probably at 15 feet from the curb.
Okay.
On that, certainly, this applicant would probably just do it to their garage, or they're not going to cover their driveway. But if there wasn't a garage and driveway there, they'd have the ability to go back to the property, the rear property line.
You probably see where I'm going with this, but if that car was facing the other direction, they were backing out, and they've got a fence along the alley line there, a fence in the yard, I could see it being a difficult sight line for the driver to see traffic in there.
And that's where I would have the city engineer review it for potential site visibility triangles.
Okay. Then that's helpful then. Thank you.
I do have a question of staff, and so this is very narrow within the amount of properties or parcels that would end up having this specific issue, correct? This isn't like a very broad sweeping change.
It actually does occur quite often. Every year I probably have 10 corner lots are usually the lots that are most exposed to everybody driving by. So I would say corner lots percentage based on how many properties are in Brainerd come in for privacy fences more than others. And this issue seems to be quite prevalent each year. I'd probably say at least 10 a year.
Go ahead.
So to that point, it's not, I think this is specific to corner lots with alleys, is that correct? So it's not every corner lot,
That's
also
correct.
a limiting factor.
Yeah, that's correct, and that still seems to be, every now and then we get a corner lot that abuts another property. It wouldn't apply to those. That isn't the norm. So there's very few properties that do that. There's a lot more properties in our lot and block configuration that are abutting these alleys.
Okay.
Sorry, just to follow on that, my last comment there, so, because I've seen a few properties too where it's this situation, a corner lot, but it's not an alley, but it's a utility easement. And so when I first saw that, I kind of thought of that type of situation, which is, part of me wants to kind of include something like that, but I don't know, that could get.
And I haven't run into too many. I really haven't run into any of those. So I think those could probably be done as a case-by-case basis for a potential variance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Otherwise, we'll open the public hearing for amending section 515-4-11 at 6:25. And anyone seeking to speak to the proposed ordinance of amending section 515-4-11 fence standards. And a second time of calling for anyone looking to speak to the proposed ordinance amendment of section 515-4-11. And a last and final call for anyone seeking to speak to the proposed ordinance amendment of section 515-4-11. And I'll close the public hearing at 6:26 now. And bring it back to the commission for discussion and or looking for a motion for approval or denial.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion in favor of the ordinance amendment as proposed.
Second.
All right. Motion by Gorham and second by Erickson. Any further discussion? And all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And motion passes. All right. Item 8D.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this was discussion at the EDA meeting. The EDA had directed staff to bring this to the Planning Commission for consideration of enhancing some of our signage, especially in our commercial areas. So with this, staff did take a look at our sign ordinance, took a look at ordinances from other communities as well, design standards and such. And I figured with this one, we can just kind of go through the actual ordinance itself. And just I'll highlight what each of those changes are. There's not a ton of them, so I think we'll just kind of go one by one. So within it, on the third page of the ordinance, you'll notice there's a cleanup section to no more than 2 ground-mounted signs and 2 flags are allowed per property. And then staff did talk about there's statute requirements for during political times. Additional signs of any size are permitted. So right now it was just additional signs. Staff was under the interpretation that you could still permit size. When reviewing a state statute, you cannot permit size either. So that was added to it to be consistent with state statute. If you go to page 4, towards the bottom, this was one of the big discussions at the EDA meeting. Banner signs are prohibited in all zoning districts except on a temporary basis. 1 banner sign per building wall shall be permitted in the districts listed here for a period of 60 days per calendar year. So the EDA did recognize that when new businesses move in, there should be kind of a period where they're allowed to put up some temporary signage, but then with that should look for more permanent signage that would have some design aesthetics to it. So then talked about banner signs will be part of the allowable sign area percentage and shall not exceed the maximum area percentage specified for each zoning district to be consistent with that signage on a temporary basis. And if you go to page 5, next one is signs are not allowed to encroach over the MnDOT right-of-way. MnDOT does allow for this with a special permit, so staff would like to add just without MnDOT approval. So MnDOT does approve signage in our commercial corridor district, potentially go over that, but it does need approval. And the next one, any sign that is found to be unreadable, unsafe, unsecured, abandoned, unlawful, or in disrepair for a period of 60 days shall be repaired or removed by the property owner. Currently, when there is a sign that wasn't being used, there was no real mechanism. I would say most communities do have a mechanism to make people deal with signs that are no longer in use or are in disrepair. So staff is recommending adding that to it. And then also a real estate sign is limited to up to 9 square feet in residential districts and 32 square feet in commercial districts. Right now, we didn't really have anything to govern real estate signs within the city. Certainly, we have a lot of them. So staff is recommending adding a provision for that. And if we go to page 7, this is where it talks about some design aesthetics to it, materials. Sign materials shall be consistent and compatible with the original construction materials and architectural style of the building facade on which they are to be displayed. Obviously, this is going to be a lot of gray area and some interpretation there, but hopefully, they can create some elements that kind of match the building. This was taken from another code within, I can't remember which community in Minnesota, but it was a Minnesota sign code. Position: the wall, projecting, or overhanging sign shall be positioned to create integral design feature of the building to complement and enhance the building's architectural features. Signs shall not obscure or destroy architectural details such as stone arches, glass, transom panels, or decorative brickwork. So certainly trying to not block architectural features or block kind of windows or architectural features like that, and keep it to the area that should be contained. This was taken again from another sign ordinance. Window signs shall not be counted towards the allowable wall signage area, but shall consist of vinyl material. A lot of times even banners will be put in windows, things will be painted on there. Signs will just be taped to it with paper. So this was kind of a discussion from the EDA as well, that if you are going to have something in the window, it should be something that's professionally done with vinyl materials. And then the last part: in addition to signs allowed without a permit pursuant to this section, 2 signs are allowed per businesses. In the commercial corridor, town center, Main Street zoning district, the 2 signs allowed must be 1 3-dimensional wall sign, awning or canopy sign, or projecting sign. And what we're really looking for here is to have some type of 3-dimensional element in these districts. So whether that's raised lettering or framing the actual sign, some type of 3-dimensional element to kind of have that sign pop off the building there and add some aesthetics to it. And then signs shall be used to display the primary name of the business only. So beer signs and stuff like that then would not be permitted in these zoning districts. So with that, I can answer any questions.
Any questions of staff? Yes.
Yeah. So I saw Mr. Duvall's email earlier talking about lighting and stuff like this. Do we have a lighting element in our sign ordinance currently, or should we be considering a lighting element in there?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I missed bringing that up, but Max had pulled it up here. So when I did actually drive around town this afternoon to see kind of where our issues might be. Certainly one of the big ones that was pointed out here was the blue rope lighting at Holiday. Creates quite a bit of visibility glare. Really the only thing we have in our sign ordinance now is it talks about the light cannot be so distracting to essentially cause any distraction from the driver nearby. So it's very vague, with what we currently have now. So there's a few other ones that might have some rope lighting in our area, as well as maybe some exposed bulbs. To me, that seems probably like the biggest issue that we have. I haven't heard a lot of complaints about backlit signs where you have actually a bulb in it and then the sign's just lit up. It seems to be the biggest issues are the ones that have rope lighting. That are exposed there, and then ones that might have exposed bulbs. So there's other signs where you could do almost like architectural lighting, but it is related to the sign, where you have something come down, there's a cover over the lighting so you don't see the bulb, but it shines down and then it illuminates the sign. So perhaps there could be an ordinance that prohibits rope lighting, as well as any type of lighting with exposed bulbs. And when I drove around town, I really did not see a ton of that. So I don't think it would be detrimental to businesses looking to add signs to the community if we did put some restrictions on for those 2 types.
Thank you. And I would like to see some inclusion of the lighting aspect in this ordinance as we develop it.
Any other questions of staff at this time? I do have some comments, questions. Within item 8D, regarding flags, so just to clarify, sorry, item E2D. Within the flag situation, that is, the Rotary goes around and puts their flags in, but this is not addressing anything of that nature because it is less than those days that are being stipulated in the ordinance, correct?
And a lot of times those are put in or near the right-of-way. So zoning code, I guess, doesn't really put restrictions on stuff for the right of way. Again, if it was on the property, technically, yes, it would be against ordinance. But this has been in the code for quite some time.
Yeah. Regarding the right-of-way then, as far as item I-15, with the permitting of DOT, is that something that will end up being easily accessible here or being able to direct the applicant to where to conduct that permitting process?
Are you discussing for signs in general or the flags?
Signs in general or anything that would be being put in the right-of-way that DOT would have to approve?
So yeah, we have contact information, and it's been a seamless process when people do have requests.
Okay. Part of the reason why I bring it up is sometimes other municipalities have a tendency of being very general and very vague as their direction to getting information. Not citing anything specifically, but Monday night. The last thing as far as window paint, item J11C. The window paint isn't necessarily specifically addressed. Is window paint okay, or is it not okay?
As of right now, paint would not be okay. Certainly I've seen examples where somebody could be a good artist, but other examples where maybe it's not aesthetically up to commercial standards. So could add paint to it if the planning commission would like. For this purpose, I guess staff just recommended vinyl graphics, but could certainly be added.
And being that it is in J and district, is that part of where we're trying to be a little bit more narrow and thoughtful as to where we're allowing more uniform, more commercial style signage? I guess what I'm trying to hone in on is the fact of if window paint is something that we want to see in the district regulations portion, or if we want to still exclude it from that district. And making sure that we're all on the same page as far as that goes. Yep.
So the way it is right now, it'd really be all commercial districts would have to have vinyl signage if they do that. So that'd be in our general commercial as well. Where it kind of distinguishes the three-dimensional signs would be limited to the commercial corridor, district, town center, and then the main street to kind of have those extra aesthetics in some of our, I guess, high volume areas. Certainly could be extended to the general commercial as well if planning commission would like, but I think from the EDA's perspective and some of my meetings with some of the EDA members, we were kind of focusing on the three districts for those three-dimensional signage aspects. So something that certainly could be discussed by the planning commission tonight.
Any other questions, comments?
Are we moving into discussion, or are we still?
I think the whole thing is going to be a discussion as the.
And I've got a few points, unless somebody else would like to go first.
Well, I just have one on section I-16. I guess I'd like the wording to be a little bit different on that. The way I read it right now, any sign that is found to be unreadable, unsafe, unsecured, abandoned, unlawful, or in disrepair for a period of 60 days. The way I read it right now says we notice it, and then we have to let 60 days pass. I guess I would like that rephrased as found to be unreadable, blah, 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 shall be repaired or removed within 60 days.
That seems fair.
Is there a general consensus among the body?
I have a question also related to that one.
Mike?
Thank you. I also have a question related to that same item. I guess abandoned, and I think this might be where the time frame comes in. A business goes out of business, the building is for sale, the sign is still up, it's for sale for a period of time. It's a nice sign structure. The old business's name is still up. Is that considered abandoned? I guess, and maybe that's where the 60-day period is. After that 60 days, it's considered abandoned, and then, can you address that?
Yeah, so
Building for sale, new owner hasn't bought it and moved in to replace the text of the sign, something along that lines. those.
So yeah, so the way it reads now is abandoned signs. You know, obviously we're reworking our potential code enforcement here. It hasn't been officially approved by council yet. The second reading is going to be at the next city council meeting, as well as consideration if we're going to be looking at major thoroughfares or whether it's just complaint based. So, you know, probably staff's probably going to notice, you know, when we're driving by potentially if this code is passed, signs that are unsafe or damaged. We're probably not going to know every single one of them that is abandoned unless there is a for sale sign for that. But the way it reads, we would then send a letter and they would have 60 days then to, I would say they could probably cover the graphic. But we've had some signs that have lived in perpetuity on some properties, you know, for years that just are kind of abandoned with the signage on there. So it's been brought up as a concern by council members in the past.
Okay. Mr. Gorham?
Jump in on a couple things. Zombie signs, that's what they are. Jan Lambert, who used to serve on this group, that was one of her things, is zombie signs, business long gone. I'll name names, Triangle, a gas station on Oak Street. Sign's been there for years and there hasn't been a gas station in there. It just looks terrible, absolutely terrible. Another classic example downtown is the business right next to the Bridge of Harmony, which has a sign. There's a sign that goes, a vertical sign, and you have to look through the layers. If you look at the bottom layer, it's from a shoe store, which I believe is from the 1970s. Shoe store from the 1970s. On top of that, when the antique store moved in, they painted the word antique on top of the words shoe. And the present building owner has not taken the sign down. It is now Visit Brainerd is what it is, and that's the location. But it's Visit Brainerd with a sign for a shoe store plus a sign for an antique store. I think this is a great idea to clean some of these things up as much as we can. To the issue of painting your windows, I think there's been great examples of people doing terrific things with it. I think of the old window right across the way over there, where they always have great displays and things and, you know, paint in the window. I don't see that as the major problem necessarily. It's the banners and the abandoned signs. Those are two of my big concerns right there. The vinyl signs that end up there just for years and years. Little Falls, if you ever have a chance to drive through Little Falls, look at their signs. Everything is neat and tidy because they've had a sign ordinance forever. And things look, it really helps. The EDA is right. It really does help make everything a little more professional. And for better or worse, one person's lousy sign will reflect badly upon everybody else in the neighborhood. So I think the general direction we're going is great. It's overdue. I served on a committee 15 years ago, a downtown design standard committee, and we addressed all of these things and had it all set up. And of course, the report went into a drawer, and that was it for 15 years. So I'm happy to see this come back. I think this is something that will be helpful for the appearance and the aesthetics of the town.
Mr. Gorham, are you asking for any specific edits or changes within?
I'm saying, I'm just trying to reinforce, this is good. I don't want to see it going after paint necessarily. I'm not sure about this, but I think this is, I'm just basically speaking in favor of the direction you're going. I like it. That's what I'm saying.
Amen. Any other questions or comments? Or discussion?
Yeah, real quick, I just throw in my comments on this. I think to what he was just speaking about with the paint, I completely agree that there's usually people who want to put paint on their walls on their business, want to do a good job with that. And so I think paint would be fine in terms of allowed uses. And then kind of going back to the lighting that we were discussing a little bit. So my hometown in Michigan, casino there, put a great big LED sign out in front right on one of the major freeways there. And report came out 5 years later, 0 accidents caused by the giant LED sign. And I know at Northern Pacific Center, we got a couple signs out there that the exposed light bulbs would be totally fine for something like that, in terms of kind of like outlining the sign just to give it a little bit of light during the nighttime and stuff like that. You know, maybe something along the lines of like exposed LED light bulbs, something want to keep track of, but outside of that, the lighting to me doesn't seem like a huge issue to put in there.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Is it possible, I know we've talked about LEDs before in terms of the color spectrum. is it possible to address it that way in terms of having the cooler color, the cooler colors and not the hotter colors, et cetera? Is that a way to possibly try to make the lights tasteful?
It's possible. I think the blue, I'm no expert and haven't done studies on it, but I know it was talked about that blues may be more distracting. I think certainly the intensity of these lights, not just the color of it. If it was a softer blue color that wasn't so intense, I don't know if it would be the same type of issue. So there are other ordinances that I haven't seen one ordinance, and I looked quite a while this afternoon that talked about color spectrum. So I don't have any reference for what that code would potentially look like. We could certainly create something for it. They do mention kind of like our candles, foot candles and stuff, and how intense certain things can be. And they talk about square footage of signs and how much watts you can do. They talked about dimming at night. So there's provisions in that I've seen in other codes. I've never really seen anything on the spectrum. Perhaps the rope lighting seems to me maybe the biggest issue. So the exposed bulbs, I know there's one other one downtown. I think is it the VFW, I want to say, or the Legion has some kind of a historic sign with some exposed bulbs. I don't think that one's ever been distracting to drivers either. So that's something to consider. To me, it seems like the rope lighting and the intensity of those lights seems to be the biggest issue.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just two comments too. A lot of these examples, it's good to consider these examples, but most of these are not in our town even, that these examples are given from. So, I mean, it's good to consider that to, see how we want to craft this, but I think the most intense blue that we're seeing in these examples are not within our jurisdiction. But, and then just going back to Commissioner Grasula's 60 days, and the question, I wasn't, trying to rebut what you were saying too. I just had a question on that same item. So if there's more discussion on that 60-day, I didn't want to cut that short.
No.
I think maybe your example perhaps addressed it, but I'll let you be the judge of that.
Mr. Kramvik, do you have enough from the body to be able to continue on with this? Do we need a motion as to bringing it back for next month?
So I could create some language based on this one. I don't know if we're quite ready to conduct a hearing at the next meeting, especially if we're going to be talking about lighting. I do think that we probably should finalize things at the next meeting for then a public hearing in August. I do know the EDA would like to probably start working on, they're potentially looking at some grants for funding signage, but would like to get this kind of squared away and then have that funding available right at the beginning of the year for 2026. So kind of timeline wise and when EDA meetings, I think we still have another meeting where we could have discussions on what it looks like and then can potentially conduct that public hearing at the August meeting, if that works for everyone.
If I may, I think we have general consensus as to that. My personal recommendation would be that as to the lighting portion of it, I believe that that is an item that would have to be tackled at a larger, more intense, broad conversation as to dealing with the lighting within the signage plus all the others. I would hate to tackle lighting with just the signs and not deal with lighting portions of other places if the city and the commission are wanting to go that direction. I'm not saying that we should or should not. I'm just saying that rather than piecemealing a specific portion within ordinance, specifically addressing it to signs, might be not advantageous, but rather dealing with the lighting situation as a whole. Because street lighting, it would be a multifaceted, multi-portion situation. And I have my own proclivity to it, but yes.
So I'll just add, street lighting in probably the last 5 years has been pretty heavily discussed. So I don't think we'd probably have to go down that route. We didn't really do a lot with signage. Unless this commission does want to pick that up again, but I do know it's been heavily discussed and heavily weighed over the last 5 years in two separate instances.
Yeah, and it was discussed within the letter to the commission as to the fact that this did come up 5-6 years ago and was discussed at that time as it pertains to signage. I'm not necessarily saying, when going for a dark city or a concept, there's a lot that goes to it, and dealing with just the specific piecemeals of it to try to achieve something. Yeah, there is the way to eat an elephant is bit by bit, but I don't know if, anyways, yes.
Well, just a question then. So are you suggesting that we don't deal with lighting at all and just signs, or just lighting that pertains to signs and no other lighting? And the reason I asked it, just the signs just seem to be so intertwined with the lighting. And what made me think of it was, again, that I-16, I think it was, talking about broken or damaged signs. If light bulbs are broken within a sign, you're dealing with lighting. Or am I guess.
My discussion point on it would be the fact that that would be more of a maintenance item. And as to dealing with the brightness or foot candle power or color temperature, lighting is one of my nerdy things that I go down a rabbit hole on. But I believe that maintenance is one thing, and then trying to tackle the lighting. There can be some generalized items as to dealing with the foot candle power portion or the color temperature portion within signs. But it can get very narrow very quick and become more cumbersome as to what staff, the EDA, and multiple other stakeholders within what is being asked of the commission to try to tackle at this time. I believe that efficiency is more what is being asked of. Yes, Mr. Gorham.
Would it be possible we can bring our concern about lights to the EDA? Could that be relayed to them, that we would like to have an element, to look at that element as well? And if, in other words, if the EDA says, no, don't even go there, or if they say, I think they'd be open to the discussion, but I could be wrong.
So the next EDA meeting is not going to be till the first Thursday in September. So we meet quarterly now. Another option, I guess, would be to not include lighting in this ordinance, but at the next meeting, we could have two separate ordinances. One that, is everything that kind of city council as well as the EDA has asked for this, and then have a separate ordinance that just pertains to lighting that could last, longer than what this ordinance, and it wouldn't kind of muddle this ordinance and could get back to the EDA so they could consider the sign grant.
If I may, would it be wise to end up including within the ordinance, the first proposed ordinance that would be for the sake of the public hearing, having sections within there that would be left blank as to deal with the lighting in the future? So that way we can figure out what exactly it is that we're focusing on, but as to get, basically making an amendment to amending the situation when we figure out what we want for lighting, or is it wiser to deal with the lighting immediately?
I would say you wouldn't want to put a section in there that doesn't have
Okay.
any wording in there. If the commission would like me to come up with a separate lighting sign ordinance from this one, we could do it that way. We could put it on our itinerary to eventually work on it as planning commission. I do see there could be some concerns that, if we do go down that direction of trying to figure out this lighting, there's a lot of aspects to it, and then how long does it potentially take to get this sign ordinance turned around for city council consideration? So the planning commission should kind of weigh that as well.
Yes, Mr. Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I like that idea of separating the two. I think we should just focus on the signs for now and deal with the lighting at a different time. I was just reading through just the introduction. I think the intent of this is to, as points are made, just clean up the old zombie signs, as it were, and more of the aesthetics. So I think, and that's why I was asking for clarification, I think just including the lighting portion, it really complicates things and should be dealt with for a lengthier discussion. I think somebody mentioned, a lengthier discussion with lighting. And especially with the note there that the EDA is considering using available funds to help businesses improve their signage with a possible 50% match. You know, that's where I think it starts to get entangled with lighting, because then if they're putting up new signs and then we go back and at another time and look at a lighting ordinance, now we've, you know, are we gonna, you know, are they gonna be out of
Now that you put up
compliance
this
that-
brand new sign, you need to change it.
And see, I think we could turn that around and say, if they're putting up brand-new signs, shouldn't they know what the lighting ordinance is? And everybody know. I suspect we'll never get back to the lighting ordinance on this. It's kind of my suspicion. I think I'm in the minority position, and I think the majority would just as soon go ahead and not talk about the lights. But that's my 2 cents worth.
You
Yes.
do think we should, sorry, Mr. Chair, question.
Okay,
You do think we should tackle the lighting now?
I think if we don't do it now, we probably never will. I can see the other side of it, that we're gonna hurry along. But I suspect we won't get back to it, but it would have been nice if the EDA could have, maybe, you know, none of us can see everything coming, but it would have been nice to have gotten a little direction on that before we started here. I do appreciate making government move fast so you can get things done and not miss out on a grant, but sometimes I think that maybe, I mean, to me, we've been waiting for years to talk about signs, so let's let's talk about the whole signing issue. But again, I don't want to hold up the whole thing. So.
Mr. Kravik?
So I think on this one, staff would probably like a motion on direction. Obviously, there's options to just include it within this ordinance based on discussion tonight. And then at the next meeting, we still would not hold a public hearing. And then at that time, the commission could decide, looks good, direct staff to add a few additional items, or just completely remove it when we're looking at holding a public hearing if it does look too complicated. Another option, again, would be to do a separate ordinance for that one from this one. You'd be running 2 sign ordinances at one time, but it would allow for additional months of discussion for the illumination aspects of signs. And then the other option would just be to do it at a later time and put it on the itinerary, or to not do it at all. So I think I would like, you know, probably a motion for one of those 4 options.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
James, was one of the options to at least have a lighting element there, and we can look at it at the next meeting and say, too complicated, throw it out?
Yep, that's be kind of option 1 that I discussed there.
I would like to make a motion to go ahead with option number 1 as discussed by James. That's my motion.
Second.
All right, motion by Gorham, second by Erickson. Any further discussion on it?
I like it. It gives us options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will also support the motion as to the, again, as far as the discussion of that. I don't want to make our meetings any longer, but at the same time, I don't know if you, I am a nerd on lighting. So, just ask Mr. Brandt, who's gone now. But anyways, any other further discussion? And all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. And motion passes. All right. Anything else from staff on that?
I think you should be good. I'll listen to the discussion again before creating the next one and figure out a consensus where everybody is at on all the language here, and then I'll add a lighting aspect to it that then the planning commission can decide to build on, or just remove in its entirety.
And moving on to item 7A, which is going to be,
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So with this, staff did present a amended allowed uses table at the last meeting. I did do some additional research to make sure we had everything that was needed in our tower ordinance as well. There's a lot to that. So I wanted to clean that section as well, added a few other items. Probably the biggest one to discuss tonight, we did receive a letter that I forwarded from Erickson's Greenhouse. They are potentially interested in selling cannabis plants at the greenhouse. Currently, our allowed uses table only allows that in the general industrial district. It's just called cultivation, whether it's indoors or outdoors. Perhaps the commission can consider tonight whether or not indoor cultivation of cannabis would be allowed within that greenhouse section as well. That particular greenhouse would still be considered a legal non-conforming use in the TN1 district, but they are grandfathered in as a greenhouse. If it's in that section, they'd be able to then do that. But they wouldn't be able to build or expand on their greenhouses in that location, but would be able to potentially sell cannabis plants as an indoor cultivation in greenhouses. They would not be able to do it outdoors. So with that, that's probably the biggest discussion item tonight. And I guess I can answer any questions on that. And then I did ask the Planning Commission to really take a hard look at it. If there's any specific ones that the commission thinks should maybe be conditional uses versus permitted, or if there's any uses that maybe should be allowed in other zoning districts, this would be kind of the time to take a look at that and let staff know.
Any questions of staff? Mr. Gorham?
Of course I do. Before I was heading over to the meeting there, I heard the ice cream truck come through in my neighborhood. Ice cream trucks are food trucks, correct? Or not?
Yeah, so that one kind of operates like, we've looked at it kind of like as a Schwann's going around the town operates. So food trucks technically can't operate in the right of way. So if they were to set up in one location in the right of way, that wouldn't be permitted. But driving around town is kind of made an exception for that.
I believe the proprietor of the ice cream truck is forbidden in Baxter. And so I'm proud of our town that we keep ice cream trucks. Just want to make that clear. That's all.
Any other questions of staff? My one comment is that I did appreciate for the parking lots that it did address the parking lots incidental to the principal uses of or on a contiguous property. The idea of not making parking lots more and more parking lots to have parking lots for parking lots. Because parking lots. Park, 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 park. Sorry, that was a throwback.
Okay, I was trying to follow.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments?
Just one, sir. I like the idea that we're going to allow Erickson's to move ahead with their business venture. I think that's just great. I think anything we can do to get out of the way of business and let them be successful is great.
For the sake of discussion, so it is still heavily regulated and oversight by the state and other entities other than the municipality having to oversee that, correct?
That's correct. Heavily regulated by the state. There's a lot of requirements for security, and the state actually has to do an inspection on the site, and then they're able to formally get a registration with the city.
Yes,
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
question. Along those lines, cannabis at the federal level is still unresolved, as I understand, or illegal? Does the city have any liability by this, or this would be privately? I know it's legalized at the
No
state
issues
level.
because it's legalized in Minnesota, so there'd be no issues from a city liability sense. Certainly, the business conducting it has to do certain measures because it's not federally regulated. I think there's still issues from federally regulated banks and such that they can't bank at them, but not really from a state or city level.
Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Kravik, were you needing any, I'm sorry, I'm still looking at the table. Any changes then of recommendation from the commission? I know that we're all kind of zoning in on, and it's a lot of table.
There's a lot to it. I think you're at the end and you keep going. There's more.
Similar to last month, I appreciate all the time that staff has put into this over the multiple years. This is not a single month investment. This is multiple years of consideration. And I will say that, as I did last month, that the table ends up being quite broad, quite impactful, whether we easily see that because it's just on the paper. It is significantly more business friendly and more focused on a number of things, and I think it is a good move. Does the commission feel that it is ready for a public hearing at the next meeting? I see some head nodding.
I think so.
Sure, yes.
Okay. Do you need a motion for that?
Does seem like we have a consensus here, so we'll bring it back to the next meeting as a public hearing.
All right. And then moving on to item 9.
Do you want a motion on that?
I don't believe that Director Cranbeck was asking for a motion for it. He saw enough consensus that he... All right. Item 9.
That's staff updates. So just wanted to update the commission. I was able to attend a great groundbreaking ceremony for Country Manor last week and excited to announce that the project has begun. Again, that's a 106-unit senior living facility with attached childcare center. So it was a great opportunity to meet everybody that we've been working with in the last couple of years here and get that project started, and that's underway on Beaver Dam Road. Then a couple other EDA updates to make the commission aware of. So the EDA is preliminarily has approved a contribution of $30,000 towards the Washington Street mitigation budget. This is to help businesses kind of through that 2-year construction process. The EDA is still going to kind of have a final review of it, but there's a plan that was put together between Bladek and the chamber. Certainly city staff and the EDA have been involved in some of those meetings as well. So trying to do what we can to help businesses through that construction project. And then also the EDA board directed staff to create a policy that would potentially waive $450,000 in valuation for construction fees of commercial child care centers and licensed daycare facilities. So staff will be creating a policy to potentially look at that at the September EDA meeting, and then City Council would have a final consideration with that. Myself, I know Justin was a liaison from the EDA to our local child care facilities and really heard the difficulties of expansion and everything that goes into it from a state perspective. So trying to do what we can from a city side of things. This was a potential recommendation from the EDA. So staff's working on that, as well as childcare is one of the biggest, I guess, one of the big things with economic development. Certainly people can't work or potentially come to the community if there's not enough childcare. So something that we're working on.
If I may, within the allowed use table, when you look at what we are proposing for commercial child care facilities, that's really broad and very sweeping as to where it now is conditional use and or permitted. Not even administrative permitting, just permitted. It's a very good step forward on a very focused, well-pushed effort. There was something else and now I forgot it. Any other questions of staff? And moving on to item 10. I'll start down at my left.
Nothing further, thank you.
I have nothing.
I've said enough.
All good.
All right. And finally, looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion, Gorham.
And second, Higgins. All right. All those in favor? I don't know why we vote. All right.